Welcome and hello, I'm Barb Chicario. I'm going to be the host for this episode of Green Time. We're going to be talking about genetic contamination, but before we do that, we're going to see a short clip from the film Unnatural Selection. We'll be right back.
Most people around here, when you think of a farmer, it's of the children's fable, old MacDonald had a farm and had, chickens and pigs and cows. That's not the way farming is anymore. It's strictly a business, and if you have to adapt and change, and biotechnology is going to play a huge role into the future in my ability to stay here and make a living.
Now you've got companies that are putting foreign genes into animals and fish that are changing the crops of the world fundamentally at the genetic level and polluting the planet with this genetic pollution. And once again, only a few scientists, corporations, and government regulators are making the decision. There's no democratic decision making. These technologies are legislation. They're going to affect our lives more than any law passed by any legislature around the world.
We are concerned about what we call genetic pollution, and we are concerned about making everybody understand that genetic pollution is something totally different from the chemical pollutions we have been stupid enough to initiate over the past 50 years or so, because chemicals never replicate themselves. Even a huge chemical pollution will over time get smaller. While for DNA, it may be the other way around, because DNA is self-replicating in principle. So a small pollution may replicate itself to become a huge pollution.
So how much more canola we got here, Martin? That's sprouted.
Well, I haven't seen a lot.
Oh, there's one. I just stepped over
there's
one.
Another, see, there's a couple.
Yeah, here we are. Here
but
again.
see, if you could have worked it, it would have put it in the moisture. It's I am organic, certified organic. The wife and I, we switched. We've been certified since 2000, and it's been doing very well for us. I mean, the certification is probably, switching to organic farming now is probably what has saved our farm over the conventional, eh? If we'd have been conventional farming, we wouldn't be here anymore. This is all canola, and look at it, it's just about as thicker than a lawn as you get to the edge of the field, eh? So it just shows the amount of seed that's been blown by the wind.
Here's the pure evidence of what can happen in a situation like ours. Here is the plant that blew across.
The seeds,
with
yeah,
the shell.
plant, okay.
The plant is all shelled out. You see there's no pods left on that plant, but look at the crop that is growing here. This is a crop that was not seeded. It blew in. It blew in here in September, as Martin explained, and now it's germinated. It is a full-blown, healthy GMO canola plant growing on organic land.
We had a strong wind, and the whole plant, like he had it cut into swaths, and they were laying out there, and when the wind comes up, and it just picked the whole plant up and blew it over here into my field. And what I was trying to get them to do was confirm that it was their product and get it picked off so the seeds wouldn't be left on my property. But now that it's still here, like I say, a big chunk of the seeds are already shelled out and laying on the ground.
You can see when I blew on it how light they are. They see how they move? Just like that, the seeds, so the wind blows them every which way. As spring runoff comes, some of these pods, and this one here is all shelled out too, but some of these plants that still have pods on, those seeds will drift during the winter and carry, and they can go a half mile, they can go a mile.
This is my life here on the line right now. You know, switching to organic saved me. Now I'm back in the commercial market again unless something, you know, and it's my lifeline that's on the line.
Welcome back to Green Time. Before we start, I'd like to introduce our guests for this evening. On my left is digger Daniel Romano, who's with CAMP, the Community Arts and Movement Project, and to his left is Don Fitz with the Gateway Green Alliance and sometimes host for Green Time.
It's so great to be a guest instead of always being the host.
That's right. What I'd like to do is to start out with giving a kind of a brief description or definition of what GMOs are, because we heard a lot about those on the clip that we just viewed, genetically modified organisms. Digger, would you like to speak to that? Maybe give an explanation of what are GMOs?
Well, GMOs are plants and animals and medicines, and what they do is they take the genetic material from one species and they take a gene and insert it into another species.
Mm-hmm. And hope they get it in the right place.
And hope they get it in the right place, because usually they don't, and it takes many tries.
Okay. So they're actually changing the DNA of the plant.
Well, they're adding the DNA from one plant or animal into another plant and animal. And that's important to note, because now you can be mixing animal, bacteria, and plant genes all together.
You even could be putting human DNA into an animal or human DNA into a plant to try to make it.
So they can go cross species, basically.
Cross species and cross kingdoms. I mean, the plant kingdom and animal kingdom.
Well, I want to kind of get into why and how come this is being done, but first, the terms are interesting to me because industry usually uses the term genetic engineering, and people that are food activists or people interested in plants often use the term genetically modified organism. So those are both describing the same thing, aren't they? Or
well, it's the industry's description is the genetic engineering, you say, but when I think that term is used wrongly. And here's why: because with engineering, it implies this exact science. It's like, think about when they built the arch and they had the two legs going up, and they had to exactly get them right. This process we're talking is anything but an exact science. They take a gene gun and they put the genes of one species on it, and then they shoot the gene gun into another species, DNA, and then they have to put a marker gene on it. Sometimes they use a gene that is resistant to antibiotics to know if it takes. So what I'm saying is they do this hundreds, thousands of tries before they get it right.
Wow.
And the important thing to note is they don't know exactly all the other proteins and genetic material they put in there. They don't know exactly how it affects the DNA of the host species.
Yeah.
That's why the term modification is so much more accurate than engineering.
Right.
In other words, at the term engineering, like Digger said, implies that things have been engineered so that we know what's happened. The term modification means the only thing we know is that the organism is different. And that's accurate. We just know that it's different, but we really don't know what all the effects of this process are going to be.
Well, in the segment of the film that we just saw on Unnatural Selection, they talked about cross-contamination of, I guess, genetically modified canola with organic canola. So exactly what is cross-contamination? Don, do you want to speak to that?
Well, it's when the genetic material crosses to through pollination. It goes to it's usually another plant, and so you have the genetically modified organisms, say if you have an organic farmer next door, that the GMO could then pollinate his plants. If you have a herbicide resistant, and 2/3 of genetic modifications for herbicide resistance, every plant that we eat has a relative which is a weed.
Right.
Every single species was bred from something that was once wild. So these genes can then cross-pollinate, and they can spread their herbicide resistance to some other to the weedy relatives.
Okay.
And this is not something that is speculative. This has happened already, and in a very big way. Canola, which you mentioned, in Canada. Well, a lot of farmers were resistant to using the genetically modified canola. Well, guess what? Pollen from the genetically modified canola drifted, and it can go for miles, miles and miles, and contaminated conventional canola. So that now, at this point, all the canola in Canada, I've been told, has been virtually contaminated by GMO canola.
So there's no way to get organic.
And it's likely to happen with everything else.
Right.
In other words, every
that's the
species.
way of nature, true.
Right. Every species, and pollen just doesn't stop very close by. Pollen can travel for hundreds of miles.
Well, why is it that Monsanto and some of these other big companies want to actually patent GMOs?
Basically, so they say they can sell it. In other words, if you couldn't patent it, people wouldn't buy it, and you don't. This protects some other company from doing the same thing once you've figured out how to do it. It basically shows that the whole process for GMOs is to make money off of it.
Exactly, and the patenting with patents. Without patents, a farmer could grow his genetically modified crop 1 year, his corn, soy, canola, and then save the seeds and to plant for next year.
Sure.
I mean, this is what farmers have done since the beginning of farming.
Right.
With the GMOs, because of the patents, the farmer can't do that anymore, and in fact can be in trouble with Monsanto and face a lot of legal litigation. And this is, again, not speculative. It has already happened many times, and Monsanto has been very forceful in their
I'm going to have to
litigation.
cut you off. This is so interesting. We're going to go to a break now, but and then we're going to see another clip from a natural selection. We're going to be back to continue this discussion. Thank you.